The next thing we're going to talk about, this is a big gasp over here. We're going to talk about kind of balancing CISMA growth, planning, and funding. This is going to be more so kind of a discussion amongst all of us. We want to hear from people in terms of we don't just want to select through people chatting, and we want to hear opinions from the newer CISMAs, from the CISMAs that have been around for a while, and developing the process within your CISMA. How are you coping with the ebbs and flows of what is the CISMA? Whether it's funding, whether it's partners, whether it's your workload, your outreach versus your management. This discussion, we didn't want to be this just cyclone of going nowhere. We would like to be able to at least have some good tangible items. But Drew had a lot of talking points that he wanted to bring up, so I'm going to let him. And like I said, we want this to be open-ended. So let's start with the first step.
All right, so I have a nice little list of things I want to talk about. So this is something I think about a lot. I've told Ryan about it, talked to Katie about it. This is the kind of stuff that I stay awake on Friday nights drinking beer and thinking about, like, how would I change things and, like, what are the problems of the world to solve. That was yesterday.
Oh, it was yesterday.
I had a relapse.
New day.
So just kind of want to talk about intentional growth. I think is really the best way to call it or to frame it. So now that I've been around for like 4 years, I feel like I can look back and think about all the things I would do differently. And Aaron doesn't know this, but we're going to talk a little bit about Aaron today. We're going to compare Aaron and myself. So Aaron's been in the middle of my thoughts on Friday night. So how does that make you feel, Aaron?
Congratulations. Are you terrified now?
So with limited funds and with changing grants and with, we all know how MISC is going from the bigger grants down to the smaller projects, and how does that change things for everyone? And I think a lot about how newer CISMAs are doing things different than I do them, right? So Erin has the world's best outreach stuff going on. Yesterday when she was here, she had her Facebook post still going. So I've like literally asked Erin, like, what do I have to pay you to do my CISMA stuff or my Facebook stuff and all that stuff? She was thinking about it. So as CISMA start, a lot of focus is going on the outreach stuff, right? So a lot of time doing outreach, partner engagement, and empowering others to do a lot of the work because of the limited capacity in the beginning. If you look at where I'm at, we don't have any volunteer days. I don't have any volunteer work. I don't do any outreach. I do like the bare minimum. If someone asks, I try and get out of it first, and then if I have to do it, still I do it because I have other things to do, and that's not really what I spend a lot of time doing. And I think there's a lot of issues with that. I think there's a lot of benefits to the community engagement and to the outreach and to the trying to change public perception and empowering them and your partners to do the work versus doing the work yourself. One of the things Ryan and I have talked about is I don't want to do outreach in any of my grants anymore, period. I don't want to do presentations to the public. I want to do trainings to partners. I have 50 partner organizations that do a lot better job engaging the public in doing outreach and have a lot bigger footprint of the people that they talk to at the nature education centers and in all their newspapers and press releases and articles. And if I can get them the good information and the knowledge, they have a better impact and a better way of distributing of that than if I do the same presentation for the same 6 master naturalists that show up to all my events on a Tuesday night because they're the ones that care about it. So trying to weigh what you're giving up as you grow is kind of what I think about a lot. So as Erin is now taking on more treatments, and I'm just going to keep talking about you, so if you don't like this, I apologize. You're still going to do it. As Erin's taking on more treatments, what are we losing? So what is changing? What are we not getting done because we're spending our time in the treatment world? Personally, I think I do too much treatments, and I went way too far to one side. I think if CISMAs are going to be long-term successful, I think a happy balance between the volunteer and the community engagement, empowering the others to do the work, and doing the work yourself is the only way to be successful. And I think about that a lot because of money. If you look at an operating budget of a newer CISMA who's living on a $60,000 grant, maybe a little bit of money here and there, if they miss one grant, there's a possibility that I'm still being able to fill that void or to find a small way to make it work for a few months. If I lose one grant, I'm gonna lose a lot. So when we're looking at 600 and some treatment sites and crews in 3 different offices, and the HWA stuff, my annual operating budget just for my staff is like 300,000+ versus a smaller group that's really empowering the others to get the work done. And you might be able to do that for 40,000, 50,000 if you cut it kind of thin one year, but you could still make it work. So long term, that the other side is going to do a lot better in these funding gaps or in downtimes, or when you miss that grant versus I miss one, I'm going to lose progress on 500+ sites. I'm going to have a lot of people that lose trust in me because I have all these landowners that think I'm going to do it for them because I have been, and now I say, hey, I can't help you anymore, and now their problem gets worse. So you take a year off knotweed treatments, and what happened? It blows back up, and now I'm an idiot. I don't know what I'm doing, and you don't have stable funding. We can't trust you, so why am I going to work with you again? So kind of thinking about what we're giving up and how to best be successful and live in that middle area. I personally like the idea of the model of the stewardship network cluster model and the CISMA meeting in the middle. So the clusters and TSN is all about that community engagement and volunteers and getting the local grassroots initiative going, where in the CISMA world I sit on grants and we do everything for you type of a mindset. And I think that middle ground is where a happy place should be. One of my big lessons learned that thinking about all this stuff that I talked to Ryan about, Ryan's response was, I don't know if this is a success or a failure. Like, I don't know where to categorize this. So when I first started, we had a couple large grants. We were very slow at spending money in the beginning, so we had a lot of money those first couple of years. And I was trying to just keep playing catch up and spend the money because grants were coming towards the end. So we took on a lot of work we probably shouldn't have. There was a lot of sites that we took on that we talked the landowners in, and we bothered them until they said yes. They weren't really engaged, they didn't really want the work we were doing, and it wasn't the highest priority work. But we had money and we had staff time, so okay, let's just do it if we can. Now as we've caught up on all of our spending, got some smaller grants, we've started charging landowners. So this year was our first year asking landowners to pay for part of the treatments, and it wasn't much. So we did a service fee between $20 and $60 depending on the area of the infestation. So we took last year's treatment data, anything under a quarter acre, something like that's $20, a quarter to a half's $30, not much money. A lot of the people were more than happy to pay it. I think as of now, we've brought in like $10,000 this year on those service fees alone that will then just roll back into stuff. But
We lost 40%.
But we have lost 40% of our treatments this year because of this fee, because people aren't willing to pay $20. And we have an opt-out. If you say, hey, I still want the work, but I don't want to pay $20, we'll still come do the work for you and we'll still keep working. We've lost 40% of our treatments this year for asking for $20.
How did you ask for the $20? Was it a paper form?
It's a letter, so we mail out for the permissions, and then round 2 is calling a lot of people. So there's a letter, hey, here's what changed, this is why, this is the service fee, this is what's going to help with, and then it's in the permission based on the size. So we've lost 40% of our treatment. So if you look back on the money we spent over the last 3-4 years treating these 40% that now we've lost because we went big in the beginning and just went for everything we could. If we would have just cut those 40% out to begin with, we could have taken that money and done better things, or we could have not wasted our time on that work that now we're not going to do anymore, and then you kind of look back, well, it's a lot of wasted time. We've had to change things up. We do a lot more of our fee-for-service type treatments this year to fill crew times because we lost a lot of those sites. But I think in the long run it sucks, but I think it's for the best. I would rather lose those sites now than to keep investing time and money if the people aren't truly interested in the work, and if they're not going to help cover down towards the end, or if we ever have a lapse in funding, we say, hey, you have to pay for all of it. If they're not going to be willing to work with us on that, then we shouldn't be working with those people anyways. So I kind of think it's a success and a failure. It sucks that we lost that money, and it sucks that it took 4 years for us to lose them. But hopefully everyone else will not make the mistake we did. If you're going to look at charge people, do it early and talk to these people early about it so that you don't get into this situation. So that's kind of,
I just wanna let you know that's not a failure.
oh, I don't think it's a failure. I think it's a hard lesson learned, but I would rather know now, and I think it's
So that's
interesting.
how it happens when you're out in front. You do what you do and you learn from it. So, good job.
I would also say we had a somewhat similar situation. We didn't take on quite as many treatments, but we did like originally do everything for free. And then a couple of years ago, we started asking for cost share. But we did that over the phone to begin with. So we were able to, because we did the thing where our permissions last a couple of years, right? So we had to call them anyway. And so when we were calling them, we said, hey, we've started a thing, we have these grants, but grant funding is iffy, so we're always trying to make that money go farther so we can help more people. Would you be able to pay a cost share not to exceed whatever, I think it was $50 the first year, and most of them were more like, 20 or 40 or something like that. And most people said yes, and if they said no, we still treated. And I think that being on the phone with them the first time made a big difference because we lost none sites and had like 10 people say, I don't want to pay, maybe more than 10, I'm probably underestimating because I wasn't usually on the phone. But most people paid it, and there were a couple people who were like, whoa, I'm on a fixed income, and we're like, yeah, totally, no problem. And then a couple people were like, I'm not paying, and we're like, that's fine too. But we didn't lose anyone over that. So it may be easier, or not easier, but it may be more effective to do it over the phone the first time.
I just started and I did it over the phone, but I still lost people.
You still lost people.
Yeah.
It's also probably like a free.
I'll say
But I
it's not forever
think-
saving money. It's also.
It's also yeah, MISC has no dollars.
But I-
Like we joke about how rich Leela and Grand Traverse are because it's true, but Benzie is not rich and MISC is home. So like we're definitely running the whole spectrum there.
It's like China, it's different around the state. You got different environments, different economics, blah, blah, blah.
But I think some of mine were like, oh, we really wanted these people to kind of like Drew was saying at the beginning, like, oh, we had extra funding, we wanted these people, they didn't really want us there, kind of to begin with.
Gotcha. Yeah, we didn't have as many people that we chased down to get. I mean, we sent them letters, but if they didn't say yes, we didn't call them again. We would send them another letter the next year, but we didn't tackle anyone on the street and beg them.
Yeah, I was just going to sort of echo that. We've been doing cross-share since our strike team started last summer. And what we've been trying to do is set expectations. First of all, a lot of people don't understand what CISMA is, how we operate. So that's how we always start a conversation. Who we are, what we do, how we're funded, and why we ask for cross-share. And we do emphasize that we do it only for, we're not treating every species, every weed that somebody wants, done away with. And a lot of times we encourage them not to use herbicides. There's a way that we can encourage them to manage themselves by pulling or whatever else, if we do that. But I think there's very few people that we haven't been able to treat. And like you say, if you've got somebody who really has a sincere desire to have it treated and they can't afford it, we do it. That's our role, I think, is to further the cause.
How did the transition go from we have grants to treat everybody for free, let's do as many as we can, to kind of this more cost share mindset? We've thought about it, but then we always get the, well, why not just keep looking for more grants so we can't keep doing it for free? Like, why isn't that how we gotta just keep going this instead of kind of shifting that mindset? So I'm wondering how your transition went. Like, was that a discussion or was it just kind of a decision you guys went with? And
Dictatorship.
yes, yes. Was it a dictatorship or was it an open discussion? Because I've brought it up a few times and like, well, if we can still be right for the grants, why don't we? It's like, well, because maybe we should. And I just think it's good management to get people involved and to get them managing to how much they can, instead of let's just keep counting out free treatment for everybody as long as we can until we beat that horse so dead it can't even come back as a zombie,
I wanted to do it like a year or two ago, but
Yeah.
talking with Ryan, I was worried about what the grant would want. They were gonna make me do a bunch of paperwork on that one, if they wanted to see all the money, so it was a partial. So that's why we didn't do it last year. This year with our new grant, we got reduced, so that if we were gonna keep up what we wanted to do and what we were doing, we need to fill that gap anyway, so let's just go for it. Jesse and I kind of just sat down and argued for a couple hours to figure out how we were gonna do it.
yeah.
kind of just told everyone, hey, this is what we're doing, the change in money, this is how it's gonna be, we want to get the landowner investment. Because I think if you lose grants for 1 year and all of a sudden I say, oh, you're not going from $20 to $50, now you have to go just $50 just because,
Yeah.
I think it'll be harder. So if you can get some buy-in just to get it going, that if you get in that spot, you can say, hey, bad year, sorry.
I would say one of the things that maybe made it easier for us is actually that we'd had a number of grant scares, where we'd had money to treat for everyone, and then we were not sure that we would have money the next year. So in our notification letters, because at the time we were still doing letters and calls, in our notification letters, we said, hey, we still have money for this year, we're planning on doing it, this is gonna be super fun, can't wait. But also, we don't know what our grant funding is for next year. So FYI, here is the contact information for the contractors that we have been using, because at the time we were kind of splitting between crew work and contractor work. And also, you can check out this list of other contractors that we've kind of got. So they knew that this was a possibility for like 2 years before we instituted the cost share. And so that made it a little easier pill to swallow for landowners. So maybe that's one of the reasons we didn't really lose anybody. And then our steering committee kind of had a similar thing of like, well, let's just get more grants sometimes. But again, because we had these situations where like, ooh, we don't know how many grants or if we're going to get enough grants or if we're going to get any grants. Because we had those kind of scares, they were much more on board. So like, it's kind of one of those like lessons learned that it's a lot easier if you've had a couple of, maybe not actual trips and falls, but maybe you tripped a little. Like I did on the trail yesterday. And so, you don't take a face plant, but you do have a trip, and that makes it a little bit more like, ooh, yeah, maybe we should diversify our funding. And one of the things that the cost share has allowed us to do is that Audrey was originally hired as a seasonal worker, and then we got an HWA grant for like winter seasonal work, and we had again more seasonal time in the summer, but there was about a 3-month gap where we didn't have money for that, but the cost share enabled us to fill that, so now she's actually a full-time, like, year-round employee, at least for the time being, again, we're all grant funded.
Until the funding runs out.
Until the funding runs out, we all have jobs, that's super cool. And so that was another thing with that money, not only does it give us more longevity and more diversification of funding, but when something comes up and we need money for it, instead of being like, well, guess we're screwed, we're able to flex with that a little bit more than we would for entire grants. So, I mean, it's a little harder when you're telling people about something that somebody else did, but it can be kind of a ghost story around the campfire of, oh, this almost happened, or it did happen and it was a problem. But when you do it okay, you could actually have something that works,
Now, when you guys switched over and started getting the cost shares, did you notice a shift in terms of species prioritization? Because all of a sudden now, I'm just thinking in terms of up here, for us, if we were to do this, the only 2 species more than likely people would ever pay to get rid of is knotweed and frag.
Yep.
They have garlic mustard in the backyard, balsam in the backyard, other things, no, we're not paying for it. So yes, we still want to tackle those priority species, and yeah, that's maybe what we're using our grant funds for, but have you seen a flux then of those more desired species
So
that has taken up more of your time per se?
Yeah, our treatments, the ones that we were paying for, were almost always exclusively knotweed and frag already. There was some garlic mustard to begin with, but we were, the whole time, because we kept finding more garlic mustard, we started out like, there's just a little, and then we're like, oh no, there's lots. And so garlic mustard was one that we weaned off on early and now only do either group pulls or like specific situations with crew time in oftentimes public areas. But we were definitely focused on the priority species the whole time, that helped. But then, as we've discovered, black swallowwort and Chinese yam, those are ones that we're still currently covering all of the treatment on, because we only have one town that has both of them. And so we're able to say we're doing this, but I'm hoping that it will be somewhat similar to knotweed, where we say, okay, well now that we've got it pretty much under control, we got that, scary, there's so much of it, and now we're down to this maintenance level and we need you to help kick in. It's way less expensive now, because that is another thing that we use a lot as a selling point, is that, man, the first year, it cost us $1,000 and blah, 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 and now that we've cut it down to this bit, you're just helping us pay for the crew time, because it takes time to drive out there and spend 10 minutes there. And so those were all like kind of selling points for people that helped a lot. But it did help that we weren't doing autumn olive treatment everywhere, that we weren't doing garlic mustard treatment everywhere, we weren't doing glossy popcorn treatment everywhere.
I think that a
had to start doing that.
I don't know that they, unvolved is something else.
I've been surprised this year with our 4, like when they completed paper treatments, it's been autumnal and honeysuckle and all. It's always been very sweet, but
Yeah.
doing multiple autumnals this year and honeysuckles that people are willing to pay for, and I was like, you guys really want that?
Yeah, we try to shift those. One of the other things that we balance or try to balance is doing work that's really important for the environment, but also knowing that there are literal businesses out there. And so trying to empower some of those businesses as partners to say like, hey, people want autumn olive treated. Can you do that? Like, so many people want autumn olive treated, and we have one strike group, and they're focused on knotweed and frag and, you know, Chinese yam and swallowwort and baby's breath, you know, like these things that are really high priorities for us. We don't have time to do autumn olive just whenever we feel like it. And so we're trying, and it has been with very limited success at this point, but trying to empower local businesses to start picking up some of that work, because we want them to have jobs too, and yeah, then we can focus on those high priority species. Because it is hard to turn people away when they're like, I want help with my autumn olive, and we're like, well, here is how you do it, and we're having a workshop on how to do it, but we're not gonna do it for you. And there's frustration there, but.
Yeah, I wish Darcy were here because she did this with Greg Mines in the UP, where she paid for everything from the get-go, and then once things were more under control, she started a cost share, and she had excellent response. Everybody was willing to pay because they knew what it would go back to if they didn't pay, right? So I wish she were here to talk more about that. But I think Phyllis is spot on with her comment that it depends on the geography, and then Nick with the species. And then Vicki, I want to put you on the spot because you have that interesting program where you actually train the landowners to take care of their own problems instead of your strike team actually going out and treating them. So do you mind speaking about that?
We don't do any free treatments on private property unless it happens to be where the infestation is adjacent to a public land that it's going on to that private property. So we'll do that just to facilitate, you know, and to get better, you know, results on the public lands. So outside of that, let's say even if we're doing a roadside and it's going onto someone's private property, but they want us to treat back by their barn, Japanese knotweed, we won't do it. So we offer either they can do our cost share, or we're willing to come out, they can work side by side with us, we'll spend an hour or two, train them on mixing herbicides, buying herbicides, safety, and get them started, and then it's up to them. So usually, even though we say an hour or two, we might wind up spending half a day with a property owner, and we've had a lot of property owners take us up on that. And I'd say about half of them the next year, when we say, okay, you know, we just want to make sure we check in like for monitoring, and then we tell them, you know, you still have the option of our cost share, or you can do it yourself because you've been trained, and about half of them wind up doing our cost share and the other half do it themselves. So I think it's really a successful program, and it's not that it was well planned, it just happened. So we kind of lucked out, we just.
Did you set that precedent from the get-go though, like?
We did, but sort of accidentally.
Okay.
It just seemed
You
logical.
probably did.
I think right from the start, I just kind of had a feeling that I'm not, you know, because, and a lot of people, so when you tell them, here's your options, we have cost share, or we have, we'll come and help you, but you gotta work alongside us and teach you, and everybody's on a fixed income and has COPD. Literally everybody. But then once we say that, it's amazing, even people with COPD, all of a sudden, they either do it themselves, or they find a couple big burly nephews that'll come and work with us. We've had people, all their neighbors come and go through the training, like one old lady had a bunch of neighbors showed up to learn how to treat frag on her property, so. Yeah.
So what I'm hearing is kind of there is this shift with these CISMAs and cost shares. And perhaps this is a more in-depth topic of conversation or a potential workshop or something. I'm not sure at what platform, whether it's in this meeting or whatever, but I mean, more and more CISMAs are utilizing this or shifting to this, and I know there's CISMAs that aren't, or they won't be for a while, so maybe this is a topic that we should consider maybe a little bit more hands-on in depth if people are looking to develop that. I would be interested, we are still, not at that stage yet, so I would be interested in hearing more. No.
A quick comment, just because the herbicide thing is such a big deal, it seems like we should have a standardized form that, so that if something happens to somebody who's you've trained to do it, you're not liable for it. You know what I'm saying? So it's just like all the herbicide rules and regulations, make sure that the person you're training to do it has signed off and that they're responsible.
Yeah, we do have that.
Yeah.
And I can share that with you.
Yeah. And then I'd just be curious, who's come here on Pines here? You guys have been doing that for years. You started before CISMA was born, really.
Yeah, so for another perspective, we've always done cost share. We've never not done it as far as I know. Mostly for that private landowner investment. So we'll actually charge the landowner, they'll pay for it. Because they're invested in the property, they'll actually give me donations on top of their payment, which is really cool. But it's mostly, I mean, we get the extra income coming in, but it's mostly that private landowner investment.
And you guys do a thing too, right, where like there's a discount if they do the monitoring for you?
Correct, yep.
Yeah, so that kind of brings down some of the time cost of, you don't have to go out to that site 100 times if they'll call, and we don't give a discount, but when we call them in the spring and say, hey, you know, we're still planning on coming out during this time and this is whatever, like, is it coming up? Have you seen it? You know, and so to have that on-site yes, no, and sometimes they'll even send us pictures is super valuable for our site, you know, that planning that we were talking about yesterday of making sure that you know what's there and know how much of it is there. The more the landowner can help out with that, the less you have to do with that prep.
You just have to be kind of careful, because I've had a lot of landowners that are like, I haven't seen it, and then you go out and it's just like all in the
Right.
grass. It's
Right.
there.
Yeah, you always have to take it with a grain of salt, but it is nice to have more of an idea of like, oh yeah, it's still massive, or yeah, there's maybe some there, or they don't think there's any there, but we'll go check.
So maybe a standardized photo plot, like you just put a stake there or something.
I think a lot of it is like, you know, after the first couple of years of treatment, it doesn't come back as that tall stalk anymore. It comes back as a little clump of a bunch of little sapling ones that look really weird, and they don't look like knotweed, and a lot of landowners don't recognize that as like a mature knot. There's like an actual knotweed plant. And so they kind of just glance over it and they're like, yeah, it's just another weird plant out in my yard. But,
There's a little booklet that has a picture of that on it.
yeah.
So pulling back from the cost share thing, getting back to the balancing of everything as more, the systems that have been around for a while, we're talking about these cost share systems that are newer, just delving into management, outreach. You know, Drew mentioned, I mean, it's easier said than done, but finding that balance between your funding, with your funding, between your management and outreach. I'd like to hear, I mean, just any perspectives of people that are, maybe that haven't developed the cost share or at that level, maybe that are just starting to delve out.
Yeah.
So I think, because our CISMA is 3 now, but I think starting off initially with a really good strategic plan and knowing what activities you want to be doing. And so like for us, and like, you know, not to like compare with Drew again, but I was thinking like, he's out doing like hundreds of sites and we're not. And you know, every system is going to be different. And I thought maybe it's like, we're just so small and we're not doing all this on the ground work. But now as we are building, you know, we do see, you know, here are the sites. We are able, when we start, hopefully, building the staff capacity, because right now it's just me as coordinator and our partners. But to have a strike team, build slowly. I mean, we did use the contracted treatment, so we did have management happening with a small list of priority species, but now we're able to slowly grow, and I feel like that's a lot more manageable. Just starting from the beginning, knowing that this is what our partners want, this is what we have in our strategic plan, and here's how we can do it.
And you guys are still pumping out as much outreach as you can.
As much as we can, yeah.
Have you receded back in terms of that, like
I would
reduced to
say yes. Like the
counterbalance?
first summer when I started, like, you know, I was out at farmers markets just to be like, hey, we exist in your community. And
Right.
now, like this year, we did swallower treatments, and I was kind of everywhere.
Yes.
And I couldn't do it all. You know, the first summer we existed, but
But I
it's
think,
that balancing.
but I think too that it's been like a thoughtful change, because I think you were, I mean, Erin was everywhere when this was started, and it was great. I think it was really valuable because it grew, the awareness and it grew really fast. But you also kind of learn like where are you having the most impact. Like being at every was being at every farmer's market valuable. We did some other outreach events, and it was like, this, when you go, you're like, I'm not reaching, this isn't a real effective use of my time. So I think the ones you cut back on, I think you've put more energy to the ones that have, like you said, have the biggest
Yeah,
footprint.
like, are we always gonna be at the Lansing Home and Garden Show? Yes. We talked to like 500 people in, a short amount of time, but, yeah.
And then I really like the way that we've handled treatments too, because we started with just by having contractors come in and getting comfortable with with that process. And this year was really, I really liked what we did this year. The two of us went out and we were our own like mini strike team. We took on one species for a couple of weeks and just to go through the whole process of what we would be asking the strike team to do. So we know, hands-on on the ground what it takes and what don't we know. And so that if, supervising new people coming on, hopefully next year, we know what they need to know in a little more concrete way.
But just, especially if you're brand new, just having that roadmap set.
Yeah.
It's way easier.
Awesome. That's a great perspective, just hearing the compare and contrast of work, for sure.
I would also say from the opposite point, like we were lucky to have a relatively similar growth pattern. And one of the things that we were very, very lucky to do is that EPA, GLRI still existed then. And so one year they had a grant opportunity that was outreach focused. Like, you can treat some stuff with it, that's cool and fine, but like one of the opportunities was like talk with more people. Like do more outreach, create more stuff, work with schools, and so we were able to get that grant and do more outreach because of that, and so that helped balance our growth. And obviously, like, that's not a grant opportunity anymore, but there may be smaller grants locally or something like that that you can use to kind of balance. But the other thing I would encourage you to think about is, we're a little bit weird in that we have our 4 full-time staff, and everybody is not like that. But one of the things that I think is really important to think about as we all grow, as every CISMA grows, is what happens if all of it dries up overnight, all of a sudden something changes, and suddenly you only have this much money. How do you balance what you used to do versus what you're able to do? And so, because that's actually happened to us once in the life of our CISMA, is we had like 3 or 4 full-time people, and then grants went away, and suddenly it was just me. And people left, and there were other reasons as well, but like suddenly it was just Katie after having several other folks. And the thing that we found was that outreach was the way forward. Yeah, we still had some money for contract treatments, and that was something we did, but we then regrew and got a crew and got other things. So kind of keep, have a little bit of a doomsday plan in the back of your head of like, just in case everything goes south, how does the CISMA still function? And like at the end of the day, I want to make sure that someone can call with a question about invasive species and they can call me and I can help them get the right answer. And if that's the only thing our CISMA is doing, I think that that's still important. Like, I don't even have time to go out and give a presentation, or I only give a couple presentations a year because I'm part-time, or like whatever sort of horrible situation this is. But like at that point, if someone can still call and get an answer, that's still worth having a CISMA, to me. And so that's something that you might want to think about for your CISMA as well.
Yeah, so our CISMA actually wrote a more formal contingency plan. If we have no funding, what do we do? And so the partners in the steering committee sat down and picked out from our strategic plan, like what is like the essential things we want to do if we didn't have funding, and then who's going to take that over. So we actually had partners step up to be like, oh, we're going to still host the website, or we're going to still do this or this, and hopefully we'll never need it,
Right.
but it's there.
Tangible items
Yeah,
that we can actually
yeah,
follow
yes.
is big,
Yeah.
very big. So if we can, we're gonna wrap up here with this, but if we can have a couple of take-home points, finding that balance if you're just starting out, don't go crazy with treatment, learn from Drew's experience, it sounds like Aaron and they've got a really great model, utilizing that balancing the cost share, that's all really good stuff to start thinking about. And like I said, I think we should honestly bring it up in another meeting. I think it's a really good item. So, like I said, there was no actions that were going to happen at this talk, but we wanted to have that kind of a discussion of as CISMAs continue and grow, funding is up and down, and just some thoughts from people of how we're managing it. And there's not one right way, right? We're all on soft money, right? So you got to go with it. And I think honestly, for the most part, we're all doing very successful jobs. Just helping out.